Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that is literally everywhere right now, even if you haven't put a name to it yet. We're going to be breaking down this fascinating piece of research called the Self Harmonization Theory. It was put together by Farzin Forouzani and Professor Phil Reed, and honestly, it tries to answer a question that I know I've asked myself, and I bet you have too. Why on earth are we more connected than ever, but feeling more lonely? Seriously, think about it for a second. How can a world just absolutely packed with communication produce so much isolation? Have you ever had that moment where you're surrounded by people, maybe at work, at a crowded party, or just doom scrolling online, and yet you still feel completely, totally alone? It's kind of the ultimate paradox of modern life, isn't it? And it's actually incredibly validating to realize that if you feel this way, you are absolutely not the only one. Because, look, never before in all of human history have we been this plugged in. We literally walk around with thousands of contacts, hundreds of ongoing text threads, and just a never-ending stream of notifications in a tiny piece of glass in our pockets. We can reach almost anyone on the planet at any given second. But despite all of this amazing hardware and software built specifically to bring us together, loneliness has somehow morphed into one of the absolute defining psychological challenges of our time. So, let's get into Section 1, the modern loneliness paradox. The fundamental issue here, according to the researchers, is that we've totally confused mere connection, just pinging data back and forth, with true, deeply felt belonging. It's like walking into a massive, bustling event. People are smiling, they say hi, you exchange those perfectly polite, rehearsed little conversations, you laugh at all the right times, you hit your cues, you play your role flawlessly, but then you walk out the door feeling somehow emptier than when you walked in. Why does that happen? Well, it's because just being surrounded by warm bodies, or digital avatars for that matter, absolutely does not guarantee that you are being truly seen. And that brings us to a crucial concept, the expressive self. This is really the linchpin of the whole self-harmonization theory. Your expressive self is that deep part of you that just longs to show who you genuinely are. It wants to be understood, it wants to be accepted, and it desperately needs to feel like your inner world actually matters to somebody else. And to be clear, it isn't seeking attention just for the sake of getting eyeballs on you. It's seeking authentic human connection. So the theory suggests that loneliness isn't about an absence of people. Loneliness actually creeps in when this expressive self gets starved of authentic recognition. Moving right along to Section 2, connection versus true belonging. Let's really look at the stark differences between what we're told connection is versus the reality of human psychology. First up, think about communication versus connection. We have never had more ways to talk to each other, right? Emails, text, voice notes, video calls, you name it. The sheer volume of talking is staggering, and yet so many people have never felt more misunderstood, because simply passing words back and forth, which is just communication, is definitely not the same thing as a real soul-to-soul connection. The same goes for visibility versus recognition. Just being seen by others, having your face in a big crowd or your picture popping up on a feed, is a completely different ballgame from being truly recognized. Recognition means someone is actually seeing beyond the surface. They see your character, they see your struggles, your values. Visibility is super easy, but recognition requires real depth. And finally, we have being followed versus being known. It is ridiculously easy to build up a follower count these days. But having thousands of strangers casually tracking your public updates, that is a massive contrast to the profound, deeply grounding human need to be intimately known by another person. Actually, the superficiality of having all those followers can make the absence of being truly known sting even worse. All right, Section 3, the social media performance. So if we're constantly struggling with this disconnect, we really have to look at how our digital platforms amplify the whole problem. They basically force us into this state of constant, exhausting performance. Our identities get totally fractured across the digital landscape because social media essentially demands a different performance for every single audience. Think about it. On LinkedIn, you're playing the professional. You're polished. You're always hustling. On YouTube, you play the creator. On Instagram, you're the picture-perfect friend. And over on X, you're the stranger jumping into global debates. Every single like, comment, and ping is rewarding a very specific, highly curated version of who you are. And here is the tragic irony of all that identity fracturing. The more we perform, the less we actually reveal. And the less we reveal, well, the more invisible we become. According to the self-harmonization theory, our expressive self gets so unbelievably occupied just trying to maintain all these different hats. It takes an immense amount of energy.
Eventually, buried beneath all those confident, interesting, or witty performances, we might actually forget which version is the real us. Our authentic self just gets totally lost in the shuffle.
Which leads us to Section 4, the Three Selves Explained. Okay, so how do we actually fix this? First, we need to understand the deep psychological framework at the heart of Forouzani and Reed's research. They argue that we essentially operate with three selves. First up is the bodily self. This is what grounds us in our actual physical lived experience and our raw emotions. Second is the expressive self, which we touched on earlier, and this is what allows us to share our authentic identity with the outside world. And third is the reflective self. This is the part of us that takes a step back to understand who we are becoming over time. Each one of these selves plays a completely unique, totally vital role in keeping us psychologically healthy. Now, looking through this framework, we start to see that loneliness isn't just a social issue, it's a deeply psychological one. Sometimes, the person we've actually lost contact with is ourselves. When your expressive self disconnects from your bodily self, you literally stop listening to your own emotions. And when the expressive self disconnects from the reflective self, we stop asking those big, meaningful questions about who we actually are. So what happens then? Well, we become absolute experts at meeting everyone else's expectations, but we end up as complete strangers to ourselves. Finally, let's head into Section 5, Finding True Psychological Harmony. Time to pivot to the solution. We really need to reframe how we cure loneliness. The answer definitely isn't about collecting more followers or networking or just forcing yourself to talk to more random people. It's actually about finding more authenticity. According to the theory, true psychological well-being kicks in when these three selves start moving together in a unified, step-by-step harmony. Step 1, your bodily self grounds you in what you're actually feeling in the moment. Step 2, you allow your expressive self to share that reality, totally authentically, no filters, no personas. And step 3, your reflective self processes that growth. When you get these three working in harmony, honestly, something kind of magical happens. Your relationships deepen, your conversations actually start to matter, and that tight grip of loneliness finally begins to lose its power over you. There's this fantastic quote from the source material that just hits the nail on the head. It says, "The deepest human need is not simply to be connected. It is to be genuinely seen, heard, and understood." Genuine connection doesn't start the moment someone notices you. It starts when they truly understand you. Look, loneliness in the digital age is a massive challenge for sure, but this theory frames it beautifully as an invitation to just stop the performance, stop hiding behind the avatars, and finally allow yourself to be seen for the person you truly are. So I want to leave you with one final question. As you go about your day today, whether you're posting online, sending emails, or just chatting at the office, ask yourself, do you just want to be connected, or do you want to be genuinely understood? I'll let you reflect on that for a bit. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer on the self-harmonization theory. I really hope it brought you some clarity today and gave you a powerful new way to look at your own inner world. Catch you next time.